It's the one attribute that everyone wants and needs. It's the one attribute that all employers are looking for, is the will to win. If someone has the will to win but doesn't have the professional qualifications, they know that they will bring that person in and then they can train them on those skills and they'll be fine. So an example of that is BUDS training. If you want to be a Navy SEAL, you've got to go to Coronado in California and you've got to go and do this BUDS training. All they're doing as part of that is trying to find those who have the attribute of the will to win. It doesn't matter how far you can swim. It doesn't matter how well you can shoot. They can teach you those things, and they can teach them pretty easily because they have the best people in the world doing that. The one thing they can't teach you is the will to win.
Greetings and welcome to the Dr. Espen podcast. I am Espen. Today I'm joined by James Whittaker. This is going to be a conversation around how you can get clear on what you want and how to formulate an exact plan as to how to achieve it. This is the kind of conversation I feel, from my experience, you'd normally pay top dollar for with a executive or a personal coach. But we're going to have the conversation today, and we're going to apply some actionable steps for you to take, irrelevant of where you are and what you've done. If you don't have a business, you want to start one, pay attention. If you have a business, you want to scale one, pay attention. If you don't have a business, you don't want to start one, but you want to get your life in order, pay close attention. James Whittaker, 3 times best-selling author, award-winning entrepreneur, and the host of Win the Day podcast. More than 50 million views now. James has taught his Win the Day framework, which we're going to talk about today, to some of the world's leading people, leading companies, coaches, billion-dollar CEOs, Olympic gold medalists, and the list goes on and on. Currently living in LA, coming from Brisbane, here in Australia. And we're going to talk today about how he uses his superpowers to help people just like you and I, basically helping ambitious, sometimes frustrated people gain absolute clarity as to what they want and a bulletproof plan to achieve it. He's also the author of Napoleon Hill's, an author with the Napoleon Hill Foundation, and a speaker at Success Magazine, and I might add, an executive producer of the $1 Million Think and Grow Rich film. Really excited. James, welcome to the show. How are you?
Espen, I'm good, my friend. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm excited. I want to get straight into this notion of win the day, because I know you've helped a lot of people that have paid a lot of money for your time. So let's leverage some of your expertise. Tell us about the win the day formula, if you will.
Yes, of course. Well, win the day stems from this idea that if you do not make the decision to win each day, you have automatically made the decision to lose. It's just so easy for us with the standards of living each day in the modern world to be able to fall victim to distraction, procrastination. And really the metric of success at the end of each day, as I define it, is total output in the areas that are most important to you. So in the morning, you've got to make the decision to win, and you can only do that by recognizing that each day is there to be won or lost. So you recognize that it's there to be won or lost, you make the decision to win, and you write down and get clear on what 3 things are you going to do today that will make your day a win, those areas that are most important to you. Those things shouldn't be all in the same area. It should be a mixture of things like career goals, physical health, mental health, family, whatever it is, just making sure you don't have all your eggs in the one basket or you'll find yourself out of balance. And then the framework that I have is called the WIN method. So WIN is an acronym. It stands for wonder, intent, nurture. Wonder is being intensely curious about how great you can be from the one extraordinary life you've been given. And the 2 elements of wonder, each one of these has 2 elements. So it's purpose and direction. So purpose is making sure you're clear on your personal purpose and your professional purpose and setting up your entire life so it's all aligned and that it gives you energy. And then direction is really goals. Most people start with goals, and I believe that's a mistake. Goals should really be markers on the path that prove that you're living in alignment. Because when you really get into the nitty-gritty of purpose, it's always something that's out there. It's always something bigger than you that you're never going to be able to fully achieve. And that's what gives you that inspiration every single day. So that's wonder. Next is intent. So intent is your commitment to a course of actions each day. The 2 elements of intent are environment and routine. Environment is everywhere everywhere you live, work, play, just everywhere you spend the most time. It's also all of the people that you spend your time with. It's the books you read. It's the food you consume. It's all of those things. It's a very, very big one. And next is routine. So these are literally the daily rituals that you take every single day that are either moving you in the right direction or dragging you back in the wrong direction. So it's wonder, intent, and the final one is nurture. Nurture is what turns you into the person worthy of the success you desire. And the two elements of that are stress. So how willingly you get out of your comfort zone so you can grow, and not chronic stress, which of course comes from things like being too deep in terms of work-life balance and not being able to have that. And the final element of that is adversity, how you respond to adversity when it inevitably strikes. So wonder, intent, nurture, and each of those have two elements.
Makes sense. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you guys, but I love this stuff. And what I've noticed is that sometimes when I learn life-changing things, I tend to kind of just go about my life and not do something about it. And I'll give you the point being, I know what James just did here is outlay a formula. And there's two ways we can do this. One, we can just continue to listen to the podcast and go about our days and say, that was awesome. And that is a great way to do it. But what if you were to go back, play that again, and write down each of those steps and write down what you would do in those steps in your life? I'm curious, James, how, when you work with, billion-dollar CEOs and executives and, or, ordinary people like, you and I and perhaps someone else, who knows, what are some of the steps that you'd implement for them? Where would be the first place for them to look to start getting results?
Yes, well, irrespective of background, the people that I work with who feel like they're treading water, they're not living with purpose or with passion, it's because of two things. They're not clear on who they are, and they're not clear on where they want to go. So that's where I start with. Like, it really is just having that awareness of what path you're on. Like, do you feel like you're winning your life right now? Like, I often ask them to give themselves a ranking out of 10 to say, how happy and fulfilled are you with your life today? Your financial health, your physical health, your career, your family. Let's just have one score and find out what that looks like for you. And once they have that awareness of how much change they need to make or to sustain that level, that enables us to get into some of the deeper stuff. The next things that I work on are values, making sure you're clear on what your core values are and really embracing those. So an example would be my core values are connection, growth, and integrity. Everything I do in my life needs to be related to those three things. I love connecting to what my purpose is. I love connecting with other great people. I love connecting great people with other great people. I like connecting with my children and my wife. Like, connection is a very, very big one. Growth is I need to make sure that I'm always improving, and I need to make sure that people around me are improving and getting better. So what can I do to help all of those people? And the final one there is integrity. It's just making sure that all the actions that I'm taking, I'm really authentic to these values that I have and that I'm leading by example rather than just telling people what to do and not living that myself. So once someone has those core values, that's when we can focus on, let's start to construct a bit of an idea of what your personal purpose looks like. And then what about the work you do and the career that you want to have and the impact that you want to have on the world? And how do we line those two things up so we can build a life that gives you energy rather than taking it away?
Oh, okay. So again, go back, press record. I should say press play, maybe record what's been said, write it down, and so on and so forth. Ladies and gentlemen, what are your top three values? You must be impeccably clear on your top three values. If you're not clear on it, do some work. I often send people to Dr. John DeMartini's website, the values exercise. There's many of them around, but definitely get some opportunity to get impeccably clear on your values. Now, you talked about growth. And I always say to my students, this is a growth-based universe, not a comfort-based universe. Yet we are programmed to be comfortable. We're programmed to, I don't want to, have a cold shower like I had this morning. We don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation. We don't want to go on a cleanse and a fast because, well, it's uncomfortable. It's easier just to eat crap food because it tastes good in the moment. So I want to talk about resilience because we know that the more successful we become, the more resilience we need to have as entrepreneurs, for example, and also not just in terms of success, but also in terms of happiness. Talk to us about resilience. What does resilience look like for you, and what have you observed in some of the top achievers around the world?
Well, it's useful to start with a definition of what resilience is. Resilience doesn't mean that you get knocked off course. Being resilient means that you can get back on track a little bit quicker and perhaps not fall as deep as what you may have done previously. That's the way that I think about resilience. And the difference between ordinary people and extraordinary people is how they respond to adversity when it inevitably strikes. These bad things are coming for all of us. We have no idea what's in store for you and I at the end of this recording. We just don't. So how are we going to respond? Well, the time to train for that is right now. It's not when that incident happens. It's training right now. What hard things are we doing? Like the cold shower in the morning, like you just mentioned. What stories of resilience are you learning? I love that you've got a podcast, just like I have a podcast. It's such a great way. It's a great platform of being able to ask questions of people to find out what their darkest moment was and perhaps what tools and resources they developed and harnessed to be able to, in many ways, surpass the life that they had before tragedy struck. So exposing yourself to these stories from people, especially in your industry, but from people of all walks of life, is going to educate and inspire you that the heartache or misfortune that you're experiencing in the present isn't a life sentence. And if you look at it through the right lens, once you're able to calm down a lot of that negative emotion, that you'll often find that the worst thing that ever happened to you can actually be the greatest gift you could ever have asked for.
This is a really big thing, and I think intellectually we can comprehend this. And of course, in the moment when we're challenged, the emotion takes over and we can't think and act clearly often. So speaking for myself with experience, what I often teach is this: from the moment of the incident, let's say that happened, something like today. So if something happens today, until the moment you can actually integrate it and see it as having benefits as well, like how did that happen for me instead of to me? The time from the incident until you become grateful for it is what we call suffering, right? And so how do we shorten it? Well, start looking at it earlier. And as James beautifully said, what does that mean? I just had a major challenge. It wasn't fun. It really hurt. It really sucks. I wouldn't want to do it again. But since it's happened, okay, what are the benefits? And this brings me back to this concept of understanding growth. And I love it. I love leaning into discomfort, James, because when we lean into discomfort, normal discomfort becomes easy. And what would have felt hard, such as, oh my God, it's too difficult, is also easier to deal with. So I love this in terms of leadership. I want to get your 2 cents worth on that. Leadership. Okay, we're a leader in our life. We're a leader in our family, many of us. We're leaders in our companies, in our businesses, and many of us leaders in communities, and some of us are global leaders. Irrelevant of the level that we're at and the kind of people that we lead, what are your 2 cents worth on leadership? How do each person step into that next level of leadership?
You must have a filter for your decision making. If you're serious about being a leader, and let's face it, whether you're working in the corporate world or you're running your own business or you have kids, people are going to be mimicking the example that you set for them. And the more authority that you have, the more senior you become, the greater the influence you have, the more they're going to mimic what you do. You need to make sure you have a filter for your decision making. That's where having that foundation of knowing what your core values are, knowing what your personal purpose and your professional purpose is, and surrounding yourself with people who live by those values and align with your values rather than contradicting your values is going to make it so much easier for you to take the necessary actions. So when I talk about a filter for your decision making, I know exactly who I am and I know exactly where I want to go. So in the hundreds of decisions that I met with every single day, I can simply run it through the lens of, does this help me win? As in, does this align with who I am and where I want to go? And if the answer is no, it's very, very easy and fast for me to be able to say no to that opportunity or whatever has come across my desk. Just as if it's something that really does align with who I am and where I want to go, it's so much easier and quicker for me to be able to say yes to that opportunity. And really so much of my life in the last couple of years is making me realize, looking back, that I've been involved in dozens of different products and companies and just really having that typical entrepreneur shiny object syndrome where you just want to get involved involved in everything because you just love the game and you love connecting with different people and you love helping people and you're always trying to find that one or two things that's really going to be a mega success. And I realized looking back at all of those different things is that I was spread so thin among so many different areas that the moment I became a parent, my physical health and my emotional health really started to fall off track. And then when my second kid was born, that's when things got really difficult and we didn't realize how good we had it with our firstborn. So having kid number two who comes around who might have some health problems, might be sleeping anywhere near as well, it means that you're really going to struggle if you don't have that foundation built. And what I mean by foundation is concentrated effort in a specific area in a life that gives you energy, reinforced through daily rituals that just become non-negotiables for you. So that is how I got my life back on track. I removed myself from all of those different things that weren't aligned with who I was and where I wanted to go. I went all in on Win the Day, which at that time had just been a passion project, something I loved, but certainly not something that I had gone all in on in the 4 years since I've had that. And now, so the last 2 years, my life of concentrated effort and breaking it down into daily rituals, things like acknowledging that the day is there to be won and making the decision to win, doing something like a cold shower to prove that I've turned up for the day, doing my morning journal when I can look back at the 3 years of consecutive daily journal entries that I've done to find out how my energy was being allocated on those days previously, to look at the memories of what was going on with my family and the different career accomplishments that I had, to write down the 3 things that will make today a win. And then as a final thought before I go to bed, thinking about and really being grateful for that one amazing opportunity that is going to manifest for me in the future. I'm being grateful for it in the present. That's how I was able to rebuild that life and how everything now is just so much more fulfilling and successful along the way.
Okay, makes absolute sense. I mean, again, in the introduction, I said James Whittaker will talk to a bulletproof plan. I think you're really starting to see and hear what we're talking about here. This sounds like a plan indeed. So there is the first step of the absolute acknowledgement and decision that you are going to win the day. Recently, I interviewed David Wolf, and he said he wrote a book called The Best Day Ever. And he said, today's not the best day. Today's the best day ever. And because I decide to make today the best day ever, then, the rest is up to God, if you will, or whatever. And this gives us the opportunity to really set our focus where it needs to be. Okay. So that has to be the GPS. The first thing you wake up, your brain is in theta, you're open to suggestion, anchor that in. Okay. So find a way, listeners, viewers, to maybe do that every day. How will you be reminded every day to make sure that every day is the best day? Okay. And now we're taking this next step. I love this. Now we talked about values, and then we talk about decision makings. I love this. I mean, many of us have heard of the 80-20 principle, how 20% of our effort is going to give us an 80% result or return on our investment. And I love this as an entrepreneur. You spoke to the shiny object syndrome. I have fallen victim to, if you will, that so many times. Oh my gosh, look, there's a thing over here, and there's a new tech thing over here, and then this person may be over here, and then we could, do this, and then the business would grow. And so what I've done is that I've just spread myself way too thin. I've in the past primarily reduced my battery to the point where I've not been able to perform as a partner, as a father, fully within my priority, and I have not been paying attention. So when you say the 3 things, I'd like to learn a little bit more about them, because this is really freaking key. What does that mean? Okay, so we've got the things, we want to focus, and we want to make sure that we have a decision-making framework. Guys, if you didn't write that down, a decision-making framework as to, will this forward me? So 1, is this within my values? 2, will this forward my mission? Will this bring me to that next level, or will it not? And within that framework, we make decisions. So I'd love to know about how you do that within your decision-making process, because I think this is going to allow a lot of people, successful entrepreneurs, up-and-coming entrepreneurs, and everyday mums and dads perhaps, really get clear on how to get results and how to maintain a good energy balance and not spread ourselves too thin.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's going to enable us to get into some of these more advanced tactics as well. So I mentioned that morning journal entry that I do. I have these templates that I use. So if anyone wants a copy of the Win the Day journal template, just let me know, or I can send it to you, Espen, and you can include that in the show notes. It's just a PDF download. It's not an opt-in or anything like that. I just want as many people out there as possible to be able to start journaling, because once you become an entrepreneur or you have a family or both, you realize just how powerful having a journal is. It really is one of the few great cheat codes in life. So as part of that daily journal template, I have a special one where every Monday, the one thing I add to that template is called Weekly Moonshot. And before I even think about the Weekly Moonshot, at the start of every year and then revised every quarter, I think about what's the one core goal that's going to have the biggest domino effect on all the other goals that I have in my life. So I'm thinking about what those are. Occasionally it might be two, but as much as possible, trying to get that through to one core goal. And then when you've got your weekly moonshot that I do every single Monday morning, I'm writing down, in addition to, or it starts with my weekly moonshot, and then I do what 3 things will I do to make today a win. The weekly moonshot is up to 3 things that need to be done this week that is going to move me closer to having that 1 or 2 core goals achieved. So an example of some of those things are with the business that I'm building at the moment to really embed the win the day mentality in the DNA of these corporate businesses. I've got a lot of things that are related to having that done and sending it out there for feedback and running pilot programs and doing all of those different things. So there's some of the tasks that will fit in rather than some of the busy work that I might feel drawn to that is there as a trap that's not really going to align with the big goals that I want to achieve, that I call those moonshot goals. So that's an example of one. And another one that I'm doing is an event that I'm running, this mastermind. That was an example of getting some really highly influential people into a room together. Obviously, anytime anyone who is listening to this or watching this, if you run an event, getting bums on seats can be a bit of a challenge. It requires you to really focus and think about what you're going to do to communicate that value and have those right conversations. So they were the 2 things that have really been part of my weekly moonshot template for the last month. And then every Friday, I have a weekly moonshot check-in where I copy and paste what I included from Monday. I drop that into Friday, and I basically just give a very honest assessment as to how much progress I made in those areas. And the best thing about that is I do that on Friday morning. So in the event that I haven't made as much progress as I want, I've still got the rest of the day to be able to do that. So just to sort of tie all that together so it's clear, because I know it might be a little bit confusing, I have the Win the Day journal template. That includes what's unique about the last 24 hours, like where was my energy being allocated, what things did I do. Next, it's what am I feeling gratitude for? Not what am I thinking gratitude for, what am I feeling gratitude for? Then it's what 3 things will make today a win. And then it's a lesson. If I have one, about 50% of the time, I'll think about a useful lesson from the last 24 hours. And then the last part of that is intentional breath, which is just a checkbox to make sure I can get that intentional breath done every day. So that's what the Win the Day journal template looks like. And again, I'll send you a copy of that so people can see it and explore the descriptions in a little bit more detail. And on Monday, the only addition to that is before what 3 things will make today a win, it's the weekly moonshot. And then on Friday, it's the weekly moonshot check-in.
Makes absolute sense. You know what? We talk a lot about discipline, and I, like you, I'm sure, have paid top dollar to learn, to travel, to explore, to receive consulting and coaching. And then we learn about this very important muscle called self-discipline. And I know that many people watching this will go, this is brilliant. Let me download this PDF. Let me devote myself to 30 days of using this formula because maybe it works. And what if, right? And by default, if we do nothing, firstly, let's be clear. If you're not interested in taking your life, your business, your finances, your success, leadership, whatever to the next level, then this is not that relevant. However, if you are, and if you feel like this is a template or a system that you could resonate with, what would it be like if you devoted yourself to 30 days of testing this? I love this idea because then you'll get to give it a test and give it a run and see how it goes. Okay, I want to talk about one thing. Self-discipline, great. We've got the system, we're leaning in. And over time, what I've realized now is this is really exciting because in the beginning, it was like, I need to be better. Like the mindset was, okay, I need to study more. And when I study more, I learn more. And when I learn more, and I've realized this with a lot of our students, they think that they need to do more study so that they can be good enough to be an entrepreneur. And I remember this about 15 years ago. I had a conversation with one of my coaches and I said, I'm going to start a business soon. And he asked me a question. He said, how long has it been, since you started saying that? I said, I don't know, 6 months. He goes, quit. And I was a bit like, dude, how rude. He goes, no. Listen, if you spend any longer than 30 days saying that you're going to be an entrepreneur, you haven't started the company yet, quit. Either start the company tomorrow or quit. So I want to talk about getting off the fence here, because the only way we're going to get results is to do something about it. Now, we're not talking about doing something risky and investing your money and losing your money. We're talking about actually getting off the fence and getting moving. What are your thoughts on taking action, irrelevant of what level that we're at? What are some of the things, apart from the formula that you've beautifully spoken about, what does it mean to take action in regards to forwarding our life and our businesses?
My favorite quote of all time comes from Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich, and says, action is the real measure of intelligence. Action is the real measure of intelligence. I've got it on a canvas print behind me. Action is the difference between wanting and having. You got to take action. So what can you do to do that? Well, one of the biggest problems I see in the world today is that everyone is so busy talking about what they're going to do, and they're trying to get the recognition and the accolades from what they're going to do instead of doing the work. So find out, what is this one goal that you have? What's this impact that you want to have? And then break it down. There's a really great system called the OKR method, objectives and key results, that a lot of very successful companies like YouTube and things have implemented.
Google, everyone, yeah,
they've got great examples of like winning a Super Bowl. If your goal was to win a Super Bowl, what are the things that you need to do? And you just build everything down there to reverse engineer it. You make everything measurable, and you assign different roles to be able to get those tasks done. Now, if it's you in your early days, that's totally fine for you to be able to do a lot of work. But you've got to turn that one big goal that you have, you got to chunk it down, which is what the Navy SEALs call turning one big mission into the different steps that are going to get them along the way. And then as you're doing that, you might have a bit of inspiration and motivation. I know certainly when I was in the corporate world and I was thinking about launching my own company for the first time, I would work till 6 o'clock. I'd come home and go to the gym and then have dinner. And then at about 9 o'clock at night till about 2 in the morning, I had just so much energy just to get into it because I loved it. And I was a bit tired the next day, but I was just so excited to work on something that I love to do, where all of the responsibilities and rewards were all mine. And that was a really empowering environment to be in. I don't know if that's necessarily sustainable, but if you've got an income that you have at the moment, it's actually perfect timing to be able to do that. While at the same time, I can certainly see merit in the burn the ships idea, which of course is spoken about in books like Think and Grow Rich. You've got to make sure that you go all in on what you're doing. Of course, there are some realities where, look, if you've got a family to provide for and you've got a good income, cool. Now is the time to be able to put some money away. Now is the time to figure out what you can do on the side to be able to launch and replace that income a little bit quicker without all of the stress of being out on your own. But as you can do all of those things, find people who already have the success that you want and just get into their orbit. There's a really great friend of mine called Dr. Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor. He's built a mailing list of more than 4 million people. I just call him up and say, Michael, let's go out for a coffee. And I would ask him questions like, dude, I need these people on my podcast. Like, who can you recommend? And he'll just go bang, 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 and literally scroll through his phone. He'll tell me how he built his mailing list of 4 million people. Then I'll go and find other people like Dr. Jeff Spencer, who is the coach of Richard Branson and the band U2 and Tiger Woods. And just to be able to be around these people, to ask them questions, to figure out what value you can offer to those people and getting them excited in you and your progress is such an incredible way of taking the energy that you have right now for this new concept into the next stratosphere. And that's what you need to succeed over all of the competitors that are coming for you.
I love that you mentioned this. The old saying goes, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And hear me out. I think it's not always that black or white. But what I realized is that the more I started developing myself and improving myself, I had a set of skills that no one else has. James does. Listeners, viewers, you do too. There's a unique set of skills that you have, something that you can do that we cannot do in that way, right? And something really, really powerful that you can grow and evolve and that people will need. And so I, for example, one of my mentors and friends is one of his companies is worth $1 billion. Every time I call him up, he's like, I'd love to have lunch because he knows he's going to feel great, have a beautiful experience and get a lot of value from spending time with me, right? In terms of the things that I teach. And then I get the napkin moment, it's like, no, this is what you need to do with your business. And I go, you couldn't pay for that. Right. So I want to ask, you mentioned, one of the oldest rules in the personal development book, Jim Rohn, get around the top 5 people and I'll tell you who you're going to become kind of thing. I want to talk about elite performers because I know you've had an opportunity, like you mentioned, to work with a lot of high achieving people, I should say. High people, that would be funny. But I want to ask you, what are the traits of the elite performers? How do you get around them? What's your experience?
Yeah, they have the will to win. It's the one attribute that everyone wants and needs. It's the one attribute that all employers are looking for, is the will to win. If someone has the will to win but doesn't have the professional qualifications, they know that they will bring that person in and then they can train them on those skills and they'll be fine. So an example of that is BUDS training. If you want to be a Navy SEAL, you've got to go to Coronado in California and you've got to go and do this BUDS training. And all they're doing as part of that is trying to find those who have the attribute of the will to win. It doesn't matter how far you can swim. It doesn't matter how well you can shoot. They can teach you those things and they can teach them pretty easily because they have the best people in the world doing that. The one thing they can't teach you is the will to win. So these employers that are looking for people that have that will to win, when they're looking through your resume, they don't want to see that you've got the same crappy generic degree that every single other person has. They want to look for you to have success, to have reached the pinnacle of something. If you had the discipline to be able to train, and even being physically fit is a good example of that. If you have had the discipline to be successful in one area, even if it's unrelated to the job that you're interviewing for, that means there's a very good chance that you have the will to win and you should be able to get a foot in the door rather than all these people who have been coddled throughout their entire life. So the will to win is it. These are people who have been very successful in at least one field. And they're like, cool, let's move on to another chapter because it's if you're a Navy SEAL, you can only do it until you're sort of 35 years old, sometimes a little bit older. If you're in the NFL, same sort of age. If you're an Olympian in any of these other disciplines, it's very rare to be able to be at the top of your physical game if you're older than 35 years old. So they're looking for the next thing. Maybe they want to be a keynote speaker. Maybe they want to launch a business. So really being able to harness the energy and excitement they have into the right thing. But again, it all starts through the same foundation of all the things that we have spoken about already. You don't want to get them motivated and then run off in the wrong motivated and do the work in the wrong direction where they're going to either waste a lot of time or they're going to start to stack on a lot of these other things that are going to move them in the wrong direction. You build the foundation, you get them clear on what's going on, just connect them with some other great people and just let them go. Don't micromanage, just let them go and be who they are.
Awesome. Hey, I want to ask you about the Think and Grow Rich film. Napoleon Hill. What do we even say? Father, creator, innovator, pioneer in the personal, spiritual, even, and professional development space. And so here comes James Whittaker. He's the executive producer of the $1 million Think and Grow Rich film. How did you get involved? And how did it go? We want to hear about it. How exciting.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to meet the filmmaker. So the project was already underway when they asked me to be involved. And it was one of those things that the more people heard about it, it was very difficult at the start, but the more people heard about it, like once Barbara Corcoran and Rob Dyrdek and Bob Proctor get on board, then the thing just has wings of its own. So I had a meeting with the filmmakers and they just said, we love your energy. Tell us how you can be involved. And I pitched them a book concept, not because I wanted to be involved in the project, because I said that this is what I genuinely believed is the right thing for them to be able to do, because every film usually has a book that comes out with it. It's just smart. Like it's just good business because you can tell so much more in a book than you can in sort of 90 minutes of screen time. So I pitched them this concept. I said, here are the principles of Think and Grow Rich. I said, provide a brief overview of each of those principles in a modern context because the original book was released in 1937, and then tell stories of two people who epitomize each of those principles, people who are living today. So rather than your Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie type people, let's find out people who are successful personifying those principles today. And that's what I did. And they said, we love the idea. Can you do it? And I said, yes, I'll knock it out of the park. And that was when I came on board as executive producer of the film and author of the book, Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy. And that's really what kickstarted that momentum for me, being able to interview people like Rob Dyrdek, Barbara Corcoran, Bob Proctor, and so many other people to find out what their clues of success were. And just to be around those people was amazing. One of the big lessons I had from that was realizing, look, if those people could do it, often starting with a lot less resources than I had, that I could certainly do it. And they were telling me that too. They were saying, look, you have much more of an opportunity to be more successful than me. And they just want to know what they could do to support. It's incredibly inspiring to be around that energy. And that was when I realized I had a few things that I sort of realized after that. First of all, is that I wanted to be around those people more often because of just how you feel. You feel so much better and so much more energized. The second one was, how can I turn a fleeting encounter into a friendship? Like a lot of those people I'm still very well connected with today, but some of the other ones, like sort of Rob Dyrdek, Barbara Corcoran, they're so busy and it's just difficult to maintain an ongoing friendship in terms of being able to sort of text or call them. So I wanted to make sure I could become friends with these people rather than in a fleeting encounter. And the third thing was I wanted to build my own brand in the process. And then I realized that Win the Day podcast was the forum for me to be able to do that. That was one of the reasons I went all in on the Win the Day podcast and began to interview people on that, because I'm sure, as you know as well, Espen, that the people that you interview, there's a certain bond that you have once you've had a 45-minute conversation or a 1-hour conversation with someone where you're each talking about your vulnerabilities and ways to help each other, especially if you can do that in person. You just have that relationship there, and you can look for ways to be able to provide value to the other person. And it means now that my network is just full of #1 New York Times best-selling authors, Navy SEAL and SAS operators and billion-dollar founders and so many Olympic gold medalists, so many other really, really interesting people. It means that if I have something that I need help with, they would love me to reach out to them, just as I would love for them to reach out to me anytime they need anything.
I've realized just the same, and it's an incredible privilege, because then, as I mentioned, going out for lunch with a billionaire mentor or high achievers, and not just high earners and high achievers, but deeply connected spiritual people. It doesn't mean that they have to be wealthy, but very interesting to see that many of them influential people are. So I wanted to ask then, okay, you've done this really well, 50 million downloads, I guess, I think approximately on your podcast now. Is that correct? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's social media views. I think it's about 63 million, across all the socials and things at the moment.
Phenomenal. Okay, so how does one do that? Because you're right. I mean, I did an interview with Dr. Bruce Lipton 2 weeks ago, something like that. No, 4 weeks ago. And 2 weeks ago, I'm jumping on a one-on-one Zoom with him and running him through my breath work. And he was mind-boggled and left an amazing success story. And now we're, in conversation as to how to collaborate and other things. I mean, who knows? So my question is, we understand relationships are powerful, necessary. It's all about relationships, not transactional, but relational, from what I say. Okay, so then how do we leverage a podcast for influence and to develop such relationships, such as what you and I are doing now?
The very first thing is to recognize that having a podcast, you get an ROI if you run it the right way before anyone even hears the episode. Like preparing for your guests, like reading their books, listening to other podcasts that they've been on, formulating your questions. You get so smart about different areas just by doing that you get the ROI. You really get the time spent. The value is already there before anyone even hears the episode. So it's really important to remember that. Second of all, this is really a lot easier if you can do it in person, because you have the rapport, you have opportunities to be able to walk people to their car afterwards or drop them off. I've picked up Jay Abraham from his house and dropped him back off afterwards. It meant that we had more than an hour in the car together, and it just means the relationship that you have is so much better when you have an opportunity to do that. And I actually, in some of the speeches that I do, I hold up a picture of the podcast studio where I record, and it's outside the podcast studio, just above the parking lot. And I say, this is the most valuable real estate I own. And what I'm talking about is the walk from the studio to the parking lot is where the conversations happen that open up the opportunities. So if you've prepared in the right way and you ask great questions exactly like you have done here, it means that the person wants to be able to connect and learn a bit more about what you're doing. And one of the things I really invest in is the video editing side. So the studio that I record in, It really doesn't cost a huge amount of money. There's so many good podcast recording studios popping up all over the world now. But where I do spend the money is on the video editor to take the content that we have from those interviews and cut them up into really great short form clips. And then I have a social media manager, and we put that on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We put it everywhere. And we're very, very omnipresent. So it means that when these platforms have an algorithm change, we've always got a lot of content going out. So it means if there's an algorithm change in our favor, we've always got content going out there to be able to leverage that. And it means that the people who have been on the podcast, if they love the content that you're putting out there, you already have the relationship, you've met them in person, they're going to want to do things like collaborate on those reels and share it with their network. And then the final thing, and this is so important, is figuring out how you can add as much value to that person's life as possible. That's really it. If you've done the preparation beforehand and you're really listening during the conversation, you should be pretty clear on what support that person needs. And if you can give them that value, then they're going to want to return that. They're going to want to bring you into their network and help you out as much as they can. That's really what I've spent a lot of my time in the last 10 years, is really getting clear on how do I find out what someone needs and how can I provide that value. And one of the ways I've done that is to focus on becoming a person of increasing value myself. Now, at the start, when it was very difficult for me to call in favors to get people to come on my podcast, and I launched very hard out of the gate. I had some very high profile people early on in the process, like Keith Ferrazzi and Gabby Reese and so many others, that by the time down the track, I've just continued to level up and level up and level up. But I've always been focused on how can I keep in touch with those people? How can I add value to those people? And a lot of that can be just connecting great people with other great people. People remember that. And that's something I love to do that. Relationships are everything.
Oh, dropping bombs, James. Right now I'm going, okay, so I need a new podcast studio. Da, 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 da. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thanks, my man. Really, really cool. Have you got a system for maintaining and taking care of these relationships, or is it just random ad hoc? You think of them, you send them a message, you love them up. How does it work? What do you do?
Yeah, it's a bit of both, because of the processes I have with the podcast. It's pretty detailed with that. Like anyone who has a podcast, with every episode that I focus on, I mean, you live and die on consistency. So with every episode, I always focus on what can I do to add more value to the person listening or watching, and how can I produce these episodes and the whole process faster. So that's what we're doing. Like even something like YouTube, where that was a very slow burn at the start. Getting to 100 subscribers on YouTube takes so long, takes years. It took me years to get to that point. And now we're getting almost 1,000 new subscribers a month. And it's just a really great position to be in once we have all of that content. I get the person's phone number as much as I can, connect with them on the socials. I'm very, very big on audio messages. If it's someone's birthday, I'll send them an audio message or a video message. For Christmas, I'll send them a letter, and I'll send them a book that I think they might enjoy. If there's someone who I know could be a good fit to connect with them, I'll make sure I do that. I always, if someone's connected me with someone else, I always thank the person first before pursuing that. They're all the things that I do, but because I have a very detailed schedule of all the upcoming podcasts and everything else, I can see it clear as day with all of the content that we've got coming out and just where everything fits.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Hey, what's next for you? James Whittaker, you've done some cool things. You've been involved in a lot of cool projects. I heard you mention some executive stuff before. What's next? 2 questions. Ready? 1, what's next? And 2, what's the big goal for you?
Yeah, the big one for me right now is to take this win method, this win framework that I've created. I've created a course with Success Magazine called the Win the Day Accelerator. Obviously, I have the Win the Day podcast. I've got all of these different things, but I haven't created a scalable, valuable offering for the corporate world. So that's what I'm doing. I'm focusing on these companies that have high concentrations of people aged 30 years old to about 50 years old who are in the thick of it like you and I, with things like kids and relationships, and your physical health can start to fall off. Your mental health can certainly start to fall off. So what I've created for them is an initial assessment to obtain their core values, and then it gives them a weekly action plan for 3 months to be able to take some of the bad things that they're doing and turn them into more positive and productive habits. And then we run them through the assessment again at the end to find out how much growth and improvement they have made. So I'm building that and taking that to the corporate world. I want to use that win the day mentality mentality to embed that into the DNA of the most growth-focused companies on the planet. That's the big thing that I'm focused on now. And in terms of like the big picture mission, my goal was sort of always to change the world. I realized when I became a parent, my goal was to sort of live my best life as an example for my children. And through that process, I will change the world. But that corporate framework, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So that's it. It might take me a week to figure out. It might take me 20 years to figure out, but I will figure it out. And that's what I want to do for the rest of my life.
That is a winning attitude right there. I absolutely love it. I've got one last question for you, sir, straight out the gate. You ready?
Of course. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So I want you to imagine, James, that right now you are on the world stage. Every sentient being alive has gathered, watching, listening, tuning in to your message to the world right now. When you're ready, take a breath, and whenever, tell us, James, what is your message to the world right now?
Look at what you can give, not what you can get.
Moment of silence. I absolutely love that. And by the law of reciprocity, of course, that'll come back to us. I love it. James Whittaker. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, grab your pen and paper. Let's go. We've got website, James Whitt. That is WHITT. So jameswitt.com. Facebook, same thing, James Whitt, which is WHITT. Same thing on many of these. Same thing on Instagram, I should say. We've got TikTok, we've got YouTube, which is Win the Day Videos. Go and check that out, Win the Day Videos. And of course, Win the Day Podcast. If you enjoyed this right now, if you're in Spotify or Apple or whatever, pop in and check out Win the Day Podcast and keep learning and keep growing. James, I want to say thank you for your time. You've delivered tremendous value to our listeners and viewers today. This will go out to a lot of people. I know they're going to love it. And I, for one, feel incredibly grateful that we've had the chance to connect and deliver more value. And as you said, with your message to the world, do exactly that. Deliver great value. So thank you once again.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Espen, and thanks so much for having a great podcast, asking great questions. I actually bought a new domain name, winThe.day. It was always a bit clunky to sort of say my jameswitt.com with the two T's and URLs, so winThe.day is extremely concise, so I'll be using that down the track as well. But thank you so much for having me on.
It's a privilege, mate. Absolutely awesome. Blessings on the work that you do, and lucky are the ones who get to be in your presence and learn from you as well. Thanks so much.
Okay, cheers, mate.